Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about Biden, OPEC, oil, and Saudi Arabia. As you all know, OPEC met on October 5th and decided to cut production by 2 million barrels a day. You all know that this cut is from the ceiling. This is from the quota. This is from the targeted production. The actual cut itself is way lower. The estimates for the actual cut, if countries stick to their quota and they follow their quota, is between 800,000 barrels a day and 1.1 million barrels a day. Please remember those two numbers, 800,000 barrels a day to 1.1 million barrels a day. The Biden administration exaggerated the impact. The media exaggerated the impact. Many analysts exaggerated the impact. And the fact is, for those who follow me on Twitter, you already know that from day one, I've been posting tweets saying they exaggerated the impact, but I did not explain it at that time. Today, I'm going to explain that, why they exaggerated. I'm going to show the evidence too of the exaggeration and the results of that. Many of you know that in the summertime, the demand for cooling in several oil-producing countries, especially in the Middle East and North Africa and West Africa, increases substantially. And since the demand for cooling increases, then the demand for electricity and power generation increases substantially. And what we've seen this year is, especially if you look at a country like Saudi Arabia, the demand for oil for that cooling and power generation starts like in February, March, start going up. It peaks around August and September, and then it tapers off and ends, literally ends. If you look at the amount of oil being used in this case, it is about 400,000 barrels a day, which means that there were 400,000 barrels a day in Saudi Arabia being used in power generation that they don't need at this moment. So they have one of two choices: either export that amount or cut production. The same thing for other countries. Look at Iraq, for example. For the first time in a very long time, they used a lot of oil this year. And the power burn, that's what they used in power generation this year, is about 250,000 barrels a day for the same period between like March and September. For the rest of the Gulf countries, it's about 70,000. So you add 400,000 plus 250 plus 70, you end up with about 720,000 barrels a day that's been used domestically, and now it's not being used. That's it. So are they going to dump it on the market and lower prices further? As you know, before OPEC meeting and before Hurricane Ain, prices were declining. And if you look at the forward curve, you can see prices even in the 70s. They don't like that. They don't want to make the situation worse in this case. So they decided to cut production. But remember what I've been saying all along. Production is one thing, supplies are another. Cutting production does not mean cutting supplies. Because if this is domestic consumption and they cut that, then they can maintain the same exports without any problems. So the impact on exports is going to be minimal in this case. So 720,000 barrels a day, that's only from the Gulf region. Remember the two numbers I mentioned earlier about the actual cut. The actual cut, if all countries stick to their quota, is between 800 to 1.1 million. 720 alone from the Gulf nations. You start adding North Africa, West Africa, and others, and you can get between 800 and 1.1. So the impact on supplies, the impact on exports is very minimal, and you wonder why the Biden administration made a big deal out of it and why the media and some analysts made a big deal out of it. It's not an actual cut to supplies, but there are other issues beside that. This is the maintenance season, which means that even if they did not announce a cut, regardless of the amount, there will be an actual cut on the ground because of maintenance, and in several countries. And that maintenance could take off probably 400 to 500 anyway of the market. So between the maintenance, between the domestic consumption, you can see that the impact is very minimal. The other issue related to that is, which is a fact of life, that those countries, the 720 they use for power burn in the summer, those countries imported some Russian oil. And that, out of the 720, is probably about 200 220 to 250 were from Russia. So the domestic production that need to be cut is about 500,000. That's still a big portion of the 800 to 1.1 million that we are talking about. But this Russian issue, we have to think about it carefully, because the more pressure the Biden administration and the G7 or the EU put on Russia, and the lower the price, whether through any mechanism, the lower the price, the more OPEC Plus will cut. Why? Because they can get the cheap oil. Why use your oil that is more valuable in the future? So if you think your oil is going to be sold at 120 or 30 or 50, 150 or whatever the price in the future, and now you can get the Russian oil at 65 and burn it in desalination plants or power plants, etc., why not? You bring more Russian oil and you cut your production. So this is catch-22 for the Biden administration. In this case, the more pressure they put on Russian oil, the lower the price of the Russian oil, the more OPEC will cut, because they are going to use the Russian oil instead of their own oil. Another point here is, if you look at the Saudi crude inventories, the storage, they've been rising. So that means there is a problem there. They couldn't sell all their oil. So why put more oil on the market if your inventories are going up? And very soon, basically, your inventories will be full, and you end up with a major problem. So if you look at the numbers, you already seen the slides. If you look at the numbers, you can see that most of the cut is production. It does not mean it's cut in supplies, and whatever cut from supplies is going to be way, way lower than the cut in production. I think the Biden administration was wrong, the media was wrong, and the issue here is, okay, so why they did it before the election? Was it political? Look, the summer ends at the end of September, probably the middle of September. You have this additional oil. What you are going to do with it? You cannot dump it in the market. You don't have enough storage to store it. What you are going to do, you are going to cut. And if they are really serious about hurting Biden in the elections, they would have cut big time, 3, 4, 5 million barrels a day. Aside from that, they don't need to announce it. They can just go for maintenance and make a major cut and announce we have a major maintenance and cut it without even announcing it and bothering anyone, and then prices will go up and Biden will have problems. The amount is so small anyway, and it's very hard to accept this idea. But there are other issues to think about. Think about it this way. The percentage of U.S. imports from Saudi Arabia, that's crude oil imports from Saudi Arabia, from the total crude imports of the United States is only 7.5%. Only 7.5%. It's tiny. It does not need all this panic from the Biden administration and some media outlets. But if you look from the Saudi point of view, the percentage of exports to the United States from their total crude exports is only 7%. So 7.5% here, 7%. But this is not the issue. The issue is this. Saudi Arabia must cut 440,000 barrels a day based on the latest agreement. 440,000. If they distribute the cut evenly among countries, what they end up with is that the cut to the United States is only 29,000 barrels a day. No one talks about the impact of 29,000 barrels a day. It's not a big deal, especially when the Biden administration is releasing 1 million barrels a day. So you have 29,000 and you have 1 million barrels a day. You can see the difference in this case. And you can see why the impact is very small. The issues related to this is the timing. The timing is already, because it's just a coincidence because of the end of the summer. The amount is too small to influence the election. We already heard from the Saudi Foreign Ministry last night that the Biden administration asked the Saudis to delay the cut 1 month until the end of the election. So we know that the Biden administration is upset because they wanted the cut to be after the election. It won't influence the election. Again, because the amount is very tiny, I don't buy it. I strongly believe that it's not related to oil and it's not related to Russia. There are deeper political issues between the Biden administration and Saudi Arabia. We don't know exactly what it is right now. Probably we'll know it in the next few weeks. And it is very clear that the impact of the cut is very minimal, if any, just look at oil prices. Oil prices increased last week mostly because of the impact of Hurricane Ian, mostly because we have a major decline in inventories as a result of the hurricane. Yes, there was some speculation, but that's it. Look at this week and look what happened. Prices today are lower than the prices before OPEC meeting. That proves that the cut has a very limited impact, if any, and the job of the cut is to prevent a decline in oil prices from the levels before OPEC meeting, and I think that's how they are going to work out. They are going to prevent further declines in oil prices. Today we've seen the inventory numbers. They were extremely high, and you can see that I think it was like 9 point something decline in crude inventories. We have a decline in gasoline, and yes, we have some increase in distillates, but in total the OPEC cut, which is going to start in the beginning of November, has very limited impact on the market. It's been exaggerated. There are other reasons. We don't know what are they. And I will see you later in another video. Bye.